for your senders of funds. Now, I'm going to say this is the old way. You'll see some brokerages have got extensive lists on their site. Do this, do that. Here's a Q&A. The big barrier to up until now for accounting folks has been, well, I don't have to deal with question and answer because they don't end up calling the customer, or someone shares a password over email, and that's just not good security practice. And that's why this has just not been really widely adopted, because you'll guess an answer, it's not right, it'll get canceled. It's not friendly. There's something now called auto deposit. And this is something that I think each of you should rush out and consider in the very near future, because it is dead easy to set up with the majority of large banks, at least out there. It's no more complicated than logging into your commercial website for your bank. You set up your, call it the receivables address that you have for your office. And that's going to be, you register an account that you want funds to go to. And all that's done now in the bank, when someone now sends an e-transfer to this email, in our case, we don't touch it, we don't handle it, it's auto deposited. So there's no Q&A. This is just super simple. And this is all you'd end up having to put on your website. Send an e-transfer to this email address. We register for auto deposit. There's no Q&A, just include your policy number in the message section. It's that simple. And you'll get a notification on email saying, hey, John Smith has sent you, $200 for policy 123. It's that simple. So that's a great, easy, simple way to collect funds. And here's an example of a broker. They've given a little too extensive instructions. All that really is important is this point number 4 down here. The brokerage is enabled auto deposit. So complete the transfer without security question. Easy, simple, cheap, and that's something that if you're with one of the banks that has the auto deposit service in place, it's no more complicated than registering your email once you log into your bank site. It's that simple. So that's pretty easy. So that's the collections from policyholders. In terms of no Q&A, gets set up in minutes. There's some limitations. Typically, policyholders have some limits, maybe a couple $1,000, and I've already told you how to register. But there's another thing that's actually called request to pay. And if you haven't heard of that, this is nothing more than, call it like a reverse e-transfer, where again, there's nothing to sign up for. You log into your bank, there's a request pay for service, and all this does, it sends out a reminder saying, hey, for policy 123, you owe $100. And what that does, it creates a reverse e-transfer. So let me just walk you through what that looks like. So after logging into your bank site, you said, okay, I'm the sender at my company. I've sent it to this policyholder who happens to be my same name. This is the money, this is the account I want the funds to go into, and I'm requesting $10. So John Knotek at ClearPay is requesting John Knotek from NZJK Simpatico. I'm requesting $10 from this policyholder. And what happens is the policyholder then gets what's called a request for money. So ClearPay Corp, John Knotek sent you a request for $10. So I, now the policyholder, I log into my own bank to approve that. So I log in as per normal. This is what it looks like. I then pick the account that I want the $10 to come from. So you notice I can't change the amount. It's like, okay, I want this to come from my checking account. It's that simple. So it's kind of like someone sending a reminder to send you an e-transfer without them having to create it. That's simple. So, and some of you may be with different credit unions and things like that. So the extent of the involvement, like if you're at any basically financial institution, you can actually send funds out for premium refunds. That's just a regular e-transfer. Auto deposit is not quite widely as available. Majority of the big FIs have it. And then request for funds, a handful of FIs have this right now. But these are all things to look at with your individual bank. From card options, I am going to flip over the microphone. I'll keep steering here, Mr. Staines, but John Staines from KixPay will give a little bit of an overview from here.
Thanks, Mr. Knotek. We don't like to say John too often because we wind up getting both of us responding to you. But thanks to everybody for being here, and thanks to Jordan for organizing this. Just in a brief way, effectively, credit cards are a very viable option, and particularly now we've got a real need for customers to have choice in terms of how they manage their cash flows and things along those lines. There are a few kind of key things to kind of think about when you're selecting a merchant service or an aggregator to do this. Typically we obviously need to get you open with a merchant account. There are aggregating services that are out there that are quick, but that can provide some challenges down the road in terms of the speed with which those services are or how long it takes to get the money into your account. So those are a couple of things to kind of consider when you compare the different services that are out there. Typically, yeah, about a week to 3 weeks to get an account open. There are typically setup fees, and then of course processing fees are one of those kind of key parts that can be a bit prohibitive in terms of what you have to pay based on the commissions that you make. It can be a bit of a challenge. A few of the companies out there do have some pretty creative ways to also help offset those, so it's worth looking into that. And then, of course, if they're a company like ourselves do have a way to offset those fees, typically it is picked up by your policyholders, and that's something that you can control depending on the relationship that you go down in terms of the actual collection technologies. I'll just get John to move me on to a fresh page. Thanks, John. So much like the Interact solution that John was highlighting, there are a couple of options here. Pardon me. A few of the brokers that we work with like to have a Pay Now button right on their website, and then it would typically redirect to a page like this. And that's usually where people start. So you need to collect certain pieces of information from the client in order to make sure that we can tell you, when a payment is approved, what policy or client ID or something along those lines it lines up with in order to make your reconciliation easy. But these steps are pretty simple. We typically provide, most credit card operators that do a virtual style terminal will provide complete white labeling so that it's very consistent with the look and feel of your website, so that folks understand that they're dealing with you and paying you. So we'll next slide, if you don't mind, John. And as a good example, so once another kind of way of doing it, and again, a lot of these solutions are very flexible in terms of the language that you put in there, what pieces of information are mandatory for the client to put in there, and really what it does is allow us as a processor to again connect the amount of money to a key piece of information, which is really just to help you with reconciliation. And again, follow-up questions are always welcome to either one of us regarding any of these technologies. Moving on. So again, things to consider is, your time to set up. It can be fairly extensive, typically because you are opening a merchant account, some financial information, as well as, key owner pieces of information are required. It is a true banking relationship and needs to be vetted completely. And then, of course, being able to offset some of the cost to your brokerage is a key kind of thing to investigate when you're looking at these different solutions. Some are more costly than others, and some have creative ways of kind of offsetting those costs. So just be aware as you go to market to understand what your obligations are, understand what your risks are. We, of course, have a significant relationship in the insurance business because we think we have some of the better products available out there, but nonetheless, I encourage you to certainly do your shopping and check out all the options that are there.
Okay, great. Thanks, John. And I'll just read one more thing. I mean, on the scale here, as John had alluded to, the very simple case where if you had $100 coming in for a $100 premium payment from a client, if you're paying 3% on that $100, when your commission's only say 7 or 10%, that's obviously onerous. So that's where KixPay's come up with a solution where they have the ability to be compliant with the merchant agreement, but offset the cost to the actual policyholder. So you can effectively offer credit cards for 0 to next to no money per month. So that's, I think, an important takeaway from this piece too. All credit card merchants are not created equal. Premium financing. So of course, I think a lot of time, especially today, clients are looking for some options and some flexibility. If you haven't, most are probably familiar with premium financings out there. If you're not, I mean, very, very high level. There's a number of financing companies out there that will pay the premiums. They collect a little bit of money up front from the policyholders. And then the premium financing company is the one that's collecting those funds. The end cost of the policyholder is about 10% effective interest rate. So it's pretty affordable. And then they are the ones tasked with collecting the funds from the policyholder, and you get settled in full and your carrier gets settled in full. So those, a lot of different regional ones, national ones. You can actually get some upside on a revenue share perspective. The only thing I would encourage you when you're looking at premium financing companies, ensure that they've got modern digital solutions for you today. That's more important than ever, as well as their, size does matter. Make sure that they've got a good access to capital, so they won't be stuck up against the wall, not having enough capital to outlay in this environment for your policyholders. In terms of the back end, so again, you've collected the funds to sit in your account. You need to disperse them to some parties out there. Lots of different options for that beyond, checks are pervasive throughout the brokerage sector for all kinds of reasons. So if you're still sending 100% of checks out the door, don't think you're behind. You're not. That's the industry. That's where it's been. There are some options to get away from checks. Bill pay online, I've already mentioned that. I think that's probably pretty straightforward for all your local hydro bills or electricity bills, water bills, rent maybe as well. Bank EFTs as well. This is where you go to your bank or your credit union and set up what's called electronic funds transfer product. Can take a few weeks to get set up. There is some costs associated with it. Wire payments, those are expensive. It's real time. So if you need to get a significant amount of money somewhere in a hurry, that's probably going to be your best option, but it's going to come at quite a price. Payroll, a number of brokerages would have already implemented payroll services as well, but there's lots of different providers in the marketplace. ClearPay, so we're what would be called a bit of a hybrid solution, where we're not just more about the money movement, it's also about the data movement. And I wanted to take sort of a moment to sort of show you how we fit in amongst this whole scale. So wires, think expensive, but quick, super easy to get started. Payroll service, again, fairly affordable given what they do, pretty quick to get started as well. So from a bank EFT perspective, that can take a few weeks to get started. And then online bill pay, that's virtually log into your bank site and get it done. So that's same day. The problem with online bill pay is you're going to be limited who you can pay. There's a limited number of carriers on there. Any carriers, you can only typically pay your agency bill settlement. You can't do any kind of direct bill advances at all to speak of. So a little bit about what we do. So we're integrated into the majority of the broker management systems out there. So what does that mean? That means that whoever does the payables in your office, they create a payment, otherwise known as a disbursement, in your broker management system, and they are done. Normally that person would have run around, printed checks, printed reports, chased around signatures. And in this environment, obviously everyone is spread all over. That's just not a conducive process. What this does is we actually get in our system, we get a data transfer out of all those broker management systems every day. We get the information of who needs to be paid, how much and when, and we get all the reporting information that needs to get to those carriers so they understand what's being paid for. And then we automate literally gathering approvals. So you don't have to go in the office to sign checks. If you have a mobile internet connected device, you can approve a payment. Super fast, super easy. Our service notifies the carrier of the payment. And again, this could be for that agency bill settlement for multiples of policies for potentially millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars, or it could be for $10 to make good on some direct bill account. Any amount that goes to any carrier, mutual, MGA, that's what we can help with. All the reporting advice gets to those carriers automatically. Again, if you remember the slide a couple of slides ago, the payable person, they create a payment in their BMS, it's done. They don't log into the bank, they don't email anybody, they don't chase signatures, they don't send a report to anybody. All that piece that's repetitive ends up being automated. And even when it comes down to the funds transfer. So our service moves the money automatically directly from a brokerage account to a carrier, MGA, and mutual account. So that's us. If you just go the straight bank EFT route, not all carriers will accept electronic funds transfers. And just to recap, electronic funds transfer is you have to go to your bank or credit union, you have to sign up for a service, can take a few weeks to get set up. Sometimes there's setup fees. And then after that, whenever you want to create a payment, you have to log in your website, the bank's website, create a payment. Someone else has to approve it. And then you've also got to turn around in your email and send any remittance advice to your carriers. So it's a bit of a step-by-step process, not all inclusive of all your carriers, but it's, it's not a bad start. Wires, as I mentioned, it's easy to use, but it's expensive, and we just don't see them used a lot when it's a domestic payment. If you're sending, funds to perhaps an overseas Lloyd market, that would probably be the only method that I really see wires engaged heavily. Refunds to policyholders, I already mentioned earlier, it's no more complicated than using the e-transfer system in your bank. A lot of brokerages have adopted this as well if they need to get money back, and I think there's going to be an increase in refunds just given the environment that they're in. Very easy, very affordable. You're not dealing with checks, and it's virtually instant. So super fast, super easy, and I think your policyholders would appreciate this type of service versus getting a check in the mail. So in 23 minutes or less, that's kind of our tips and tricks for electronic payment collections and disbursements. And love to see if there's any questions out there, comments, thoughts. If Jordan, if you wanted to take over any kind of handling of questions or comments from a microphone perspective, thank you.
Yeah, there's no comments or no questions so far in the group chat. If anyone wants to ask questions there. I'd even open it up if someone has a question and they want to verbally ask it. Just gonna be quiet though. Let's just blame it on Monday.
Yeah, I will say that John and I will put a bit of a tip sheet together to put this in a more cohesive fashion for you. So then as you're making some of those choices, which is the best route for you, we'll put that in, and I'm sure Jordan would be happy to share it with the group in the next day or so.
Yeah, we actually have some questions now. So are there higher risks associated with e-transfer payments, example, fraud, phishing scams, versus setting up payments through online banking?
Yeah, no, I think that's a bit of a leading question, I'll say. I think it's very intuitive to believe that anything that's got not locked down completely, there is going to be inherently more risk to that, 100%. Any kind of online bill payments, the fraud level is going to be next to zero, because those things are basically locked down on either side. In terms of the bank has set you up as a payee, you as the brokerage, or has set up your payees in the system, and the banks are going to be in full control of that. Versus your e-transfer is a little more loose. The phishing piece, I mean, that's a whole separate conversation. Anything that you do online, you just have to think twice. You have to be cautious about what you're doing, but the brokerages that we work with that use e-transfers, we haven't heard of any material issues at all. E-transfers are sending, I wish I had the numbers in front of me, but it's growing by 50 to 60% a year. I think over 10 million Canadians are using it, and increasingly the dollar value of the e-transfer is increasing. Everyone's limits are going up, so inherently, of course, there is some additional risk, but I think it's extremely manageable.
John, I'd just like to jump in and add one thing there. So, I mean, we obviously, as a credit card processor, send requests to pay to clients as well. I think what, in terms of the client, lens, when they receive an email requesting a payment from your brokerage, it's usually immediately following a conversation or a series of emails that are related to making a change, or buying a new vehicle, or something along those lines. So it's not something that comes out of the blue several business days later. And the great part is that you can also send the links. I don't know if e-transfer supports that, but certainly in the credit card world, you can take the payment link and put it right into your direct email, so it is coming from an email address that they would recognize from, and you can put in direct context to it. Here's your policy document plus all the things that we talked about, and this is, you just click this link and you can make the payment there. Those are the kinds of things that I think give consumers a lot of comfort in terms of taking you up on that offer to pay that way. And because it is a fairly direct communication, it's not something that gets intercepted easily. So it does make people feel more comfortable with the process, kind of front to back. So that would be my 2 cents on that.
We have one that says, what benefits might you point out for entirely direct bill brokerage?
Sure, I'll grab that. And just to build on to John's earlier point too, I think there's about 6 million Canadians have actually registered with auto deposit. So when you're actually going to create a, say, premium refund to a client, as soon as you type that email address into your bank site, it'll pop up saying, hey, X user has already registered for auto deposit, no Q&A is required. So that's another piece that builds in some security. In terms of a direct bill only brokerage, so actually in our world, so we push the payments out to carriers. 70% of our transactions are direct bill related, meaning we have policyholders that are on a direct bill plan and they go NSF and they have to come into the brokerage or email them money to the brokerage. It comes into the brokerage, and that's basically turns into a direct bill advance. So our system can then send that $100 on to the proper insurance carrier. Or maybe it's a down payment on a new policy, same thing. It's going to be a direct bill account, but the initial collection comes out of the brokerage office. Or even just, some cases a policyholder has paid the brokerage in error. It's already in your account. You need to get it out of the account to a carrier. That's a piece that our service handles as well.
And then we have one more that says, would ClearPay also enable a brokerage to easily reconcile direct bill statements with issuers through the BMS?
Aha, you're you know what our game plan here is. So we have connectivity into the broker management systems right now. So that's where we get an automated data feed. We're slowly getting the connectivity on the carrier side. So what we do in Envision is having a full statement upload back from the carrier so that it'll automatically reconcile your direct bill commission statements. That's what a lot of brokers have been asking for, but you can't. The highway we built is the one-way money movement. Once that's done, we can then build the data coming back. So that's totally within our game plan, absolutely. Because we're also part of what's called the Guidewire Accelerator, meaning any of those large carriers that have moved to Guidewire will have a turnkey solution for that.
Awesome. Well, there are no more questions in the chat. We're coming up on 1:30 here. Anyone else? Going once? Twice? Sold. All right. So first and foremost, I apparently need to apologize with my not thoughts. I can't remember names very well, so I said that George was going to be in here, and I saw the presentation. It was actually Mike, so Mike was supposed to be involved, I believe. I don't even think he's here, so apologies for Mike to calling him George.
No problem.
Other than that, a huge thank you to both of the Johns for being with us today and taking time out of their day and sharing their presentation. A huge thank you again to Wawanesa for being our presenting sponsor for today. And thank you everybody for just coming and listening to this presentation and watching me fumble through our first e-learning session. So I'm sure the next few ones I'll probably be quite a bit better. But yeah, thank you everyone for coming and listening. And if you have any questions at all, feel free to even just email me and I can forward them. But yeah, from everyone at IBAS, I'm sure ClearPay and KixPay, stay safe.